to lose it. Section number 3 here, aren't we? All set?
I believe so.
Okay, the packet we gave to you also had a kind of proposal on economics, and the first thing I wanted to point out, we did costing of the union's proposal, and our cost, the economic proposal you put on the table would cost $4 million over the 3 years of the contract, more than if we just continued the merit pay plan. So that's something that is just not within the realm of what a budget can handle. That breaks down about $3 million in terms of the proposed wage increase, and the other, what I call add-ons, the different pieces with overtime and holidays, et cetera, adds another $1 million. And again, this is all above, not now, it's above what the budget would be if we just continued the current pay plan for the next 3 years. That's something that we don't think is advisable or affordable in terms of the budget of the city. We're proposing an economic package that is almost $1 million more than if we projected the pay plan over the next 3 years. And it's contingent on getting a millage increase. Management of the city is going to try to get a millage increase, the property tax rate, so that it can pay for its proposal that we're making to you today. I think our current thinking is looking at a millage rate that goes back up to where it was like 3 years ago, almost to what, 4 is the 3.99, 2014, 3.99. And we're going to need your help on that, because we need to convince everybody that makes those kinds of decisions that it's worth it for public safety to have an increase in millage. The millage rate's gone down, and some of the what you put on in a great display in the last meeting, your PowerPoint projection showed the property values going up and all that, but I can tell you that the amount of additional revenue from property tax increases was less overall than the ordinary cost of living, cost of business increases over the same time. So it's not like that's new money that we can use to fund increases. But we'll go through, you can see in our proposal, we are essentially calling for a temporary freeze on the merit pay plan for the 3 years of the contract, but increasing both in terms of the scale and each individual's wage rate 4% for each of the next 3 years. I think it would probably accumulate to about a 13% increase. Again, that the total dollar value of that is about almost $1 million more than if we just kept the pay plan in effect. And we're rejecting all the add-ons, and we can go through various pieces of that if you'd want to. But that's where we're and even so, this proposal is contingent on getting a millage increase. If we don't get a millage increase, this proposal I don't think is doable. But we're willing to present to the citizens the best we can to get a millage increase by, so that this can be done. And that, like I said, we're going to need the help of everybody here to get that done. I think it's worth it. You guys deserve it. We do have the city of Jacksonville is the major labor market player here, and good, bad, or indifferent, we have to deal with that. You talked about attracting and retaining quality officers. We need to do that. This proposal that we've got is getting the wage scale up to where Jacksonville, or close to where Jacksonville will be on October 1. Another piece of this proposal is that we're proposing just to maintain the status quo till October 1 and have a 3-year contract starting October 1. That saves the city a little money, but it still guarantees the 4, 4, and 4 that'll be paid over the next 3 years, and gets us into an October 1, September 30 3-year contract. If we started the contract earlier, we'd have to go with a 2-year, a few months contract, which we want to have a 3-year contract. I think you do. And because Florida law doesn't allow a contract more than 3 years, so we can't start a contract now or backdate and then go through September 30th, 2020. So our proposal includes starting this on October 1. It also corresponds to when our big competitor in the labor market here has their increased wages go into effect. I think one thing that'll make the city of Jacksonville Beach more attractive than the city of Jacksonville is that the defined benefit pension is still in effect here. We've got some proposed language for like a memorandum of understanding, which I'll hand out to allow the continued use of funds in that program. Here, let's see. Here they are. I'll hand this to you. We, as you can see from our proposal, we're actually proposing to delete, most of the text of what's in the pension language in the article, but have this as an appendix to the contract. And of course, we'll negotiate over any sort of changes to the contract. We had talked earlier about we're going to make some tweaks that are beneficial to the membership that have to be voted on by the council. But basically what we're doing is incorporating by reference whatever amended pension plan goes into effect, whenever it goes into effect, and putting that in our contract. Two things that I think might deserve some discussion that are really sort of non-economic. There's, but where they're, and
All right,
I think
I'm sorry, Eric.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your MOU here.
Mutual consent agreement.
Yes, sir.
Explain paragraph C.
Well, let's start with A real quick. I just got a quick question since I'm new to y'all's game. Currently, what is the policy with the 185 monies y'all receive?
They don't, our 185 money, we gave our 185 money 3 years ago that had
Right.
accumulated as of that time. And that was a one-time contribution.
And I think this continues that.
Okay. That's the way I read it.
And I think you would propose deleting that type of language from the
Well,
contract.
we were deleting the language for the one-time contribution since it was no longer valid because it was a one-time contribution for that contract period. So there was no need to have that in the continued language because it was not our intention to make any further contributions with our accumulated chapter money.
Right. Well, we have a proposal here to continue
I can see
to do
that. I can see that. And you're also asking for all the accumulated monies as of 1 October in paragraph B.
Right.
All right, and now please explain paragraph C.
I think it's,
by Florida statute, you have to open a share account. You do not have to fund the share account. So that's the language for that.
okay.
What does that mean?
That means that you have to actually create a share account for each individual officer, that you do not have to fund it.
Is this in addition to their current DB plan pension? Similar to what they're doing in Jacksonville? Is that what the intent is on
No.
this?
No.
This is still, the defined benefit pension is still in effect and will be continued.
This is the Chapter 185 money will be used to offset the city contribution. If there isn't a mutual agreement, then there's a very complicated process in terms of how that money is spent.
Sure, because it's
And-
usually used strictly for benefits or enhancements. I think that was the intent of the 185 statutes, to use that money for.
There's
still
new
veterans.
language.
What?
There's new language
Yes,
in
new language.
185
Can you
this
tell me,
year that
just so I can be
relates
aware
to
of
the
it?
share account.
You can reference 185, there's language in there that addresses the Chapter 185 money.
Okay, next.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's two things that I think came up that I wanted to address. One is you had proposed deleting the maximum usage of sick time for attending to a member of the employee's family's illness. I think the city's in the process of amending its FMLA policy to allow that on an unlimited basis in FMLA circumstances, but not in general circumstances. So I think if that, and I think that's in progress. Also, I think, isn't there some work being done on the
Looking at the
employee
limit for
donation
donations,
files and
new
looking at that
donations.
limit. So even though we have not proposed any changes to that in the contract, by operation of city policy, some of that may be coming your direction once that's finalized. And that's where we are. I think we're willing to talk about specific items that you proposed. Like I said, these total add-ons with total up to over $1 million over the 3-year term, and just are not going to be what we consider to be cost prohibitive, particularly in light of the wage increase we have. The wage increase we have proposed, I think, for the most part, I think the bargaining is better off having the increase in the wages because that helps on retirement. Now, some of the add-ons like overtime are also, some of that can be included in the pension calculation. But by and large, the best bang for the buck for any available dollars is to put it in the wage rate for pension purposes. So that's our intent in doing it that way. But we're,
Is there any thought that maybe the city would offer a signing bonus, one-time, non-pensionable signing bonus?
that's not part of our proposal. Again, I think the bargaining is better off having that in the wage rate. Whatever can be, paid would be in that form because that increases the ability to get a pension. And I think like I said, the wage ranges now are going to be in line with what will be coming in the city of Jacksonville.
I want to come back to the retirement article real quick.
Okay?
What number is that, real quick?
So you are proposing that we delete all current contract language with regard to the retirement.
Yeah,
And go to a memo of understanding.
well, that's for on these particular items. Now, we can't change anything in the retirement plan.
That you striked all the wording.
Well, but we still can't change anything in the retirement plan without bargaining with the union.
So why strike all the wording?
Because it's not necessary to have it in the contract. We can put any sort of changes or clarifications in an addendum that can happen whenever we bargain over any kind of changes to the collective bargaining agreement. But we can't unilaterally make any changes. It is now the status quo. In fact, right now we don't have a contract. But we have to abide by the status quo unless we first negotiate a change. So it's just, and what we're doing in 29.1 is incorporating by reference the particular plan, once it's tweaked, that the city council votes and approves. So by reference, that whole plan document will be part of the contract. What we have here is we had several years ago, we made some changes to the plan that we wanted to spell out so everybody understood what they were. But once they're in the plan, can't be changed without negotiating with the union. And we're prepared to negotiate changes to the pension plan with the union.
Again, when we did this 3 years ago. So just to clarify, you're striking the language because the language is no longer needed because the plan
Is in effect.
is in effect.
And it's also incorporated, will be incorporated by reference if our proposed 29.1 is adopted.
All of these changes are already part of the pension ordinance.
Yeah, they're
And so-
adopted.
It just looks a little over the top when you get a proposal and all the language is stricken.
Well, if you recall, prior to 3 years ago, we didn't have a pension article in
And we
the
still have
collective
pension.
bargaining agreement. The only
Right.
reason for adding it was to allow us to identify the changes that we were proposing and allow us to.
Right. So other than what this proposed MOU says, there are no other proposed changes by the city with regarding the pension?
There are a couple of minor changes that are being considered that are to benefit of the employees. I don't remember the details of them, but they're,
We're gonna bring.
Has that been presented to us?
No, we're gonna bring before you their enhancements to the plan. We're doing a rewrite of the pension plan. So there's been some tax law changes by the IRS. I can give you an example of one. In the pension plan right now, if you retire, you can't be hired back. That was basically an IRS ruling. The IRS has changed their ruling now, so they do allow someone to retire and rehire. So we'll be proposing that as some enhancements to the pension plan. So it's basically changes in
That is-
IRS regulations that are going to allow us to bring some enhancements back to you on the
Right.
pension plan.
And are those changes that are going to be proposed and managed and approved or disapproved on at the pension board, or is that for collective
It's all
bargaining?
collective
we have to bargain with you on.
Okay. But-
Council is the one who has to ultimately adopt those by ordinance.
Right.
And under the ordinance, if the memo and all was signed off on in the future, would the unions have any say at all in any proposed changes if the
Yeah,
city council?
if they want to change it again,
That would not
we'd have
take
to
away their
bargain
rights.
first. It's a mandatory subject of bargaining. And the same, I think, true with the body camera. It's not a settled question in Florida. I looked into that. But I think the conventional wisdom, and my advice, would be to bargain first, so it doesn't need to be in the contract if you have to bargain by law, that we would do that. If it's some court somewhere in Florida says it's not a mandatory subject of bargaining, we'd want to retain the management right to decide whether or not to do it, but there are absolutely no plans to do it right now. But the commentary that I've read suggests that it is likely to a mandatory subject of bargaining, and I'm sort of risk averse, so I'd probably advise these folks, unless there was a case on point in their favor, you better bargain and before you do anything along those lines. Of course, they don't have any plans to, so it's a moot point at this stage.
And my concern and apprehension, obviously, is because of what happened in Jacksonville with my pension plan. I don't want to be construed that this is some type of waiver in the future, that we no longer want to participate in the bargaining or anything.
There's not a waiver. It memorializes some clarifications to the current plan. If we have some other enhancements that Ann just described, we will let you know about them, and I presume you'd be okay with them if they made the pension plan better. But that all has to be done before City Council would vote to approve it. And there's no intent at all to change any of the stuff that's redlined in this document that it's embedded in the pension plan.
Do your proposed changes, or do you foresee the changes include raising the employee contribution?
We haven't made any proposal along those lines yet. It depends where these negotiations go. If, there can always be, you might propose that in exchange for additional wages. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's
That's something we
difficult
have
for us to propose one without the other.
Well,
So,
that to me, right now, we're not proposing any kind of change there, but if it depends where the money needs to go when we're divvying up the pie. And what's the most acceptable to you guys.
well, should then those proposed pension changes not be brought now?
Well,
as
they would
opposed
have to be brought, but if there were any changes of the pension, it have to be negotiated.
No, I understand that completely, but should they not be part, or at least,
Well, it's not part of our current proposal.
okay. So as of right now, you're saying that there is a possibility that the city is going to propose additional employee contribution to a pension negotiation to occur at a later date?
Yeah, I'm not saying yes
Okay.
or no on that. I don't know.
Okay.
We'd have to see how these negotiations go. Again, a lot of times negotiations, you got a pie like this. There's different ways to slice it,
Okay.
but the pie can't get any bigger. So,
Well, going back to your comment about the millage rate, correct me if I'm wrong, but the city has exercised its rollback rate over the past 3 years. Is that correct?
it has rolled back
We
rates.
Okay.
have lowered the millage rate.
And-
Correct.
And
So-
what we're talking about is now getting it back up to where it was, approximately where it was in 2014.
Correct. So let's just call it an increase. If the numbers off the top of my head would be about 7% is what we've seen over the past 3 years. Correct? About 2 point something.
I didn't do the math.
Okay, well,
right
it's
now,
close
but
to
it
about
goes from what, 3.7 something to 3.99, or is what we're looking at.
It would be going.
Okay.
from
So currently, right now, the city collects about $17 million in property taxes. Now, I understand that there is legislation in the pipeline that could impact the city's property tax revenue to the tune of increasing the homestead exemption.
Correct. I think
Okay.
I think it's going to go to a vote of the taxpayers as whether or not to do that.
Correct. I understand
and
that.
if they vote for it, then
Then we're looking-
and that's about a $500,000 hit.
About a
annual.
$500,000 is what
what
I
I've heard.
figured. And that would take effect November 2018, again, if I'm correct, for that tax year.
It would be for the 2019 tax year.
Okay, so that's when the city
So,
would,
yes.
so when the city would realize it. So if the city's collecting, the city's not going to see an offset due to the increase in the homestead exemption until the fiscal year of 2019. So the city is going to realize a 7% increase in a $17 million property tax. That's about $1.2 million. Now 1.2 over 3 years is 3.6 million. So I would like to ask, how is your saying that the increase in wages of 4 million a
I'm not
completely
sure
infeasible?
what your math is coming from, but our projected
we've rolled
increase
back-
due
we've-
to the increase in property values, is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
ma'am. If we're going
For
to,
the upcoming year?
if we raise the millage rate up 7%, so we're going to collect 7% more in taxes, correct?
It's
Round- and I
it's about 0.20. I don't know what that turns out to be as a percentage increase.
I have my notes on
I can do some calculations here.
Yeah, because the city has seen, it's been a 2+ rollback over the past 3 years.
which has cost
Yeah.
us, by the way, $1.8 million over 3 years in tax revenue.
Again, and I'm not arguing with that, and that is the city's decision, the city council's decision of whether or not to exercise the rollback, its financial position. We understand, like you said, there's a very large pie. We are a piece of that pie.
Right.
However, I do understand that you have the entire pie to look and account for.
Right, and there are other budget increases, cost of living type increases and expenses with the city. I think the prior years on that was like 4.65%.
Okay.
So, that eats up, and it was much more than the increase in revenue from the property value increase. So, it stuff gets eaten. Also, it's not included in the 4 million we're talking to you about, but you've got an issue with the firefighters are right behind you, and they're gonna, just like in Jacksonville, they're gonna want the same deal. So you're looking at,
I'm gonna say it for the record, because and my firefighter friends are probably not gonna like me. I don't care about them.
yeah, well, you know what, and you may have a point there, but we still have to operate in that environment, which is,
I understand.
we're faced with it.
Bottom line is, whatever increases, we're putting on the table, whatever it is that we agree to, we have to be able to fund those. And so it's going to require a millage increase in order for us to fund those. And like Eric said, it's not, I know that you're only negotiating for your union group, but we have to consider what it's going to take to fund the increases for the general fund entire payroll.
May we use the break room for a short caucus?
Sure. Or you want us to go? 'Cause
No,
you-
the four of us need to talk in private. He'll turn that off.
Sure, I'll walk in there, it's got a code.